Also have the Morrow Kazadale Sewer Service area, which is just to the south of the property. And that includes the villages of Classic Way and the villages of Hopewell Valley. Um, so this property is located just on the fringe of our service area, and we've met with the Pikes, Donna, several times to talk about potential sewer service. And bringing their property into our service area will require an amendment to the boundary. And the commissioners establish the sewer boundary. So you establish, where we serve. This would be an occurrence where, we would have to go in and amend the sewer service boundary. This property is in Hamilton Township. So we have a representative here from Hamilton Township to provide their input as far as the township's wishes as far as sewer service to this area. It's really the summary of the issue is whether the town or the county commissioners amend the sewer service boundary or not.
Very good. Thank you for setting that up. We're happy to hear from the Pikes that would like this.
First of all, if I may,
Sure.
have these. Good morning. Good, thank you. Thanks so much. I was just gonna say the same thing, but I thought it would sound like I was a stalker. Good morning. Hi, I am Donna Pike, and I have my son here, Josh Pike, and we have lived in Hamilton Township for over 25 years. So, we've been part of this community for a long time. The reason why I'm here is my other son, Ryan Pike, passed away from drug addiction. It's been about 1.5 years now. It was right during the beginning of the pandemic. And he struggled with it on and off, but he fortunately was sober for a couple years, got married, and then the pressure seemed to sink in and he relapsed again. And when he did, he was told here in Warren County that he needed to go to sober living. And unfortunately, there was like a 6-month wait for that. So he didn't make it. And all the meetings were shut down. He was going to AA meetings and NA meetings, and he was doing pretty good, but then everything stopped. So, once again, the pandemic played a part in this, I believe. But the second part to this is, I believe that, people need longer sometimes to be able to heal. And so a good friend of mine gifted us with money to be able to get the property that we have. It's a 12 to 13 acre farm on Montgomery Road there in Morrow, and for a sober living facility. Now, this isn't a treatment facility. It's basically so that people can heal, and it takes time. And a lot of these places, they take all your money and then they say, oh, the money's gone, you gotta leave. People aren't ready. And they get pushed into jobs and pushed into life situations that they're not ready for, and then they relapse and they die. So, this was very important to us to try to do something, because I know Ryan would have totally thrived at this place. And so we wanted it to be a farm. We wanted it to be healing. It's kind of a holistic approach we're taking, more with working with the land. They will not have outside jobs. They will stay at the farm as long as they need to, and there will be no charge. It's faith-based, so we hope to get a lot of donations and fundraising and things like that, and help from the community. And so with that being said, I went through the zoning process, of course, to be able to get the PUD zoning so that we could do the things we need to do. But in addition, we're at a crossroads because we can only have a certain amount of people, 5 to 6 people, which isn't very much, because the house we could potentially hold 12. And our hope is down the road that someone will donate, and we have enough property to put another home, and that was put in the PUD, so that we could have maybe a women's home and a men's home. They're far enough apart, they'll have their own things going on, but we'll come together for meetings and things like that. So anyway, we have a septic system that can only, hold 5 people right now. And so for us to increase 5 to 6, so for us to increase, and I know we're going to be, we've already got calls because we were on the news, people are just, and with it being free too. So it's going to be hard to turn people down, and we hope that we can at least service 12 people at some point. So my point is, in order for us to increase at all, we have to upgrade the septic. Now, the septic already with the leach beds takes up a good portion of our property. So now it's going to be even more if that be the case. And it's very, very expensive to do this. So we really feel strongly. And then once the girls come on, if we have a female one, that's going to be another upgrade. It's just continual. And it takes all of our land away and all the purpose of what we're doing this for. So anyway, that's why we're here today, to beg you, please, to let us in this service area so that we can get sewer for this business that we have to help people and save lives. It's not like we're out to make profit, because it's nonprofit. We're not trying to, whatever. We're just here to do something good and to help people. And we're asking you, please help us help them.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Pike. My initial thoughts are, number one, we're sorry for your loss, and thank you for trying to do something about it. Number two, God bless you for what you are trying to do. What a great mission to go down that path. And I will say, before I understand all the facts, our board, I'm sure, would be unanimous in saying, absolutely, we support you, that 100% whatever you need, we're local government, we're here to help you. However, you're in a very unique position because of something we've always referred to as unintended consequences. That as government, if we do something for someone, we more or less have to do it for everyone. And so if we go down this path and we don't go your way, it's not because we don't support what you're doing, it's because if we do this and let one parcel, and again, we need to hear from council and from the township, but we let one parcel, when we have kind of these hardcore lines and say, this is the line and these have been adjudicated, we've had court cases on this, people inside the line, you get them, outside the lines, you don't get them. That's the way we've tried to control this rampant growth that was literally killing Hamilton Township for a period when I first took office, and Little Miami schools. I mean, fiscal emergency and all sorts of problems because of this unfettered growth that was hitting the township. So we installed these basically demarcation lines around and said, you can grow inside of this, it's less density outside of this, and that's worked for more than a decade. So we're very conscientious of that because it has worked. And what are those unintended consequences that it's almost, you would be a textbook example of someone, of course would change the rules for you. We support what you're doing. But if we do that, what's it going to affect it's going to have on the entire township and the growth of the entire township. So that's what I need to learn more about. But I wanted to preface that my goodness, thank you for what you're doing. We support what you're doing. And if it doesn't go your way, that's exactly why it would go your way, because we 100% support your mission. It's just, can we get there, but yet protect the integrity of not opening up the township to this growth all throughout the township that would have devastating effects on it, if you understand where I'm coming from.
I do, but with that being said, I do believe there should be some sort of an exception rule for people that are trying to do something good for the community and that are nonprofit, that maybe there could be something in there that says, let us at least give this a chance, because how do you ever get anybody in to do good for your community? Then all these developers that want all this money and stuff, it's I don't know, I just feel like there has to be somewhere.
I agree, and we're going to explore all those.
Yeah.
If there's an exception or we can carve it out, we've done some carve-outs for other type of things, but not related to the sewer boundaries, like sewer
Right.
tap-in fees and
Right.
things like that,
Right.
where we've tried to encourage certain things. We've been very creative as a board of trying to make sure those things happen. So we'll go down that path and try based on legal counsel. So
Thank
again,
you.
we're not going to, again, any ideas you have, but I just wanted to tee it up that this is why we're going to be kind of talking about this isn't just a layup of course we support you, because of course we do support you. but we also support the township relative to this plan that's been in place for a long time, because we saw the negative effects of just let it rip growth. It literally almost bankrupted Little Miami schools, and the township was in fiscal, I was there for that. So that's my history of, I know what happened when we just let housing come as far as the eye can see.
And I can understand that when you're talking about housing and all that type of thing, but you know who we are, you know how many we can have. We're willing to even say, hey, we can do this amount until you want us to do more, as long as we have that access. Because what's happening is we're redoing the house, and they need to know if we're gonna eventually have sewer or if we're not. I mean, that's something that we, kind of have to know what's going on. So anyway, I just would really pray that you guys think hard about this, because it would be a sin to have all that property and everything we're doing for only 5 people.
Right.
You know
No,
what I
well, again, rest assured, we're gonna try.
Okay.
So
And I
hopefully we can
appreciate
get there.
that. I
And again,
appreciate
I'm
that.
just trying to tee it up. If we
Yes.
don't, we're
I
gonna
get it.
try.
I get it. Thank you
Thank you,
very
ma'am.
much. My son's gonna just add a few things, if you don't mind.
Pretty good job covering what I was gonna talk about. It's all good. Hello, Commissioners. First and foremost, my name is Joshua Pike, Donna's son. I am the president of St. Zachary's Haven and a resident of Warren County, Hamilton Township at 5472 Appaloosa Circle. Just appreciate you guys getting us on, the docket, the agenda here to talk about something that my family and I are so passionate about. And to completely understand your side of things of opening up sort of Pandora's box by, letting us in from that standpoint. And, just know that I've just been so humbled and blessed through this whole process, thinking that we would get so much pushback from the community. But we have yet to have one single person give us pushback for this cause. And that should resonate with each and every one of you to show how much, value that we're gonna bring to our community by doing this. And unfortunately, it's just to the point where we're not gonna be able to, one, get up and running or grow to where we wanna be to provide that value without getting the access to the sewer. So a couple things that I wanted to mention is that they are building a property right across the street from us with, at one point, was supposed to be multifamily housing. Since because of COVID, the developer has decided to go with single-family homes. So at one point, those properties were obviously at some point given the approval to go on the plan for these multifamily structures, which in doing your research, you'll see that the capacity is double of what it would be now with the single-family homes. I think that, coupled with the fact that Hamilton Township wrote the letter supporting that they, part of their comprehensive plan that they passed in 2020, that they did allocate, sewer capacity for the urban service development, and said that St. Zachary's Haven would be a perfect fit for that capacity that they did allocate. So I think those are pretty two, good hardline facts that say, hey, this is something that, may open Pandora's box, but is it really worth it? And if it does, do we have the factual behind it to support that decision? And just know that St. Zachary's Haven, as our nonprofit, if you were to get any pushback from the community or open that Pandora's box, we're here to support you 110%. My mom touched on the fact that we really can't start with the renovations and development until we know if we are going to be able to go the sewer route versus the, to where it's at on septic. And just an idea of the cost that we've cost on both of it, you're looking at about a $25,000 difference between us upgrading everything from the septic to being able to get the sewer access and run that in there. And the biggest thing that I see from that is just if we do eventually have to go the route of septic, it's going to eat up in our plans for, expansion. We may lose some of the animals that we were going to use for therapeutic reasons, but the biggest thing that I see that we're going to have to lose is the pond that we were going to put on the property. And to me, that would be devastating, because that's what my brother was passionate about. He loved to go fishing. It was his peace, his zen, so to speak, to be able to do that and, just drop a line and sit there all day and just relax. So I think, it's just something that would really upset the apple cart, so to speak, if that were not to come to fruition. But other than that, you know, I just appreciate your guys' opportunity. We completely, wholeheartedly understand your support for us, and we appreciate that, and appreciate the opportunity to at least present to you guys and get this moving hopefully in the right direction. So,
Yeah,
that
I
being
think,
said,
I think
any
we
questions?
recognize the need that when we talk about Warren County, you know, from a 30,000-foot level, we're blessed in so many ways. Great schools, low crime, you know, financially, we're in great shape. But we've had a problem, a drug problem in this county, like in many, many other suburban counties throughout the Midwest. So we recognize it, and we don't try to put it off on someone else. So again, we 100% support the mission of what you're trying to do. I think I speak for my colleagues in that there's not even a question, do we support trying to get more treatment facilities inside of the county? Because again, there's no one profile of who this affects. It affects so many families inside of the county, so we understand that.
Certainly. All right, well, thank you.
I'm really sorry for your loss.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Shane.
It's a real testament to his life that you all want to, in his honor, do this. So that's to be commendable. I wonder about losing my son. You are a very strong family, and your faith is evident. So thank you for being a testament.
We appreciate it, and if, you know, we can save one life through this whole process, it's all been worth it, so, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from the township now.
Sorry, I just want to talk to Mrs. Pike real quick. Haven't had a chance to talk to her. My name's Alex Kramer, Economic Development Zoning Director for Hamilton Township, 7780 South State Route 48, Hamilton Township, Ohio, 45039. And so I think when this first came around, the township had kind of a neutral position on the whole sewer versus septic issue. And throughout the meetings and learning much more about all the ins and outs and details of what they wanted to do, what it would mean to have sewer versus septic, the trustees really became more supportive of pushing for supporting them to have sewer. And so ultimately, went through the process with the Pike family and this project, very supportive. And they asked then for a letter of support back in mid-September. So on September 15th, we did have of 2021, we had the trustees sign a letter of support to have them added to the sewer assessment area. I think from a development perspective, this is technically inside the urban service boundary of the township, but it is not part of that sewer assessment area.
So wait, so it's in?
Well, I believe it is. I mean, and perhaps legal counsel can help clarify this, but if you look at the map here, I did an outline of the urban service boundary.
What does the urban service boundary mean as opposed to being in a area where the sewers are provided? Is there a difference?
There is. Yeah.
Okay, so why is it significant about the urban service boundary with regard to sewer?
Yeah, Bruce, why don't you define the terms so we're all on the same page? Because there's two big terms here, right? The urban service area and the sewer improvement district.
To answer that.
You got a mic on?
Yeah, I do have it on. Let me start off by saying that Chris Broush and I met with Donna and Josh to talk about this issue. And at that point, we weren't sure whether the property was in the urban service boundary, and I'll define that for you as you've asked me to do. But what Chris has told you is this is sort of almost like a devil strip in between two sewer improvement areas. So by law, the county commissioners are vested with the discretion to determine where to extend sewer improvements, sewer lines, collection lines, et cetera. And there is the Morrow Cazadel, which is the area that's been shown here, and I explain why that's shown there. And then you have the Morrow Rochester, which is to the east. And these two come in close proximity, but the Pike's property falls in between those two. So it's not in either one. A urban service boundary is a planning concept where someone like Hamilton Township has done some comprehensive planning and decided that it's an area where we want, say, high-density development, as opposed to an area that's outside an urban service boundary. It's a rural area where they do not want high-density development. They want rural development. And what Commissioner Young has a better grasp on because of his past experiences with was the Zor Road area. And in 2004 and in 2005, this Board of County Commissioners modified the sewer improvement area boundary to make it Zor Road. That was a big issue for a lot of people out in that part of Hamilton Township because the sewer improvement area didn't follow any roadways. It actually ran through parcels and it sort of dissected parcels. So part of a property owner's property would have been in the sewer improvement area and part of it was not. And the Board of County Commissioners were facing a number of residents because they were looking at reducing the area, not enlarging it. And that meant taking it away from some of those folks out in that area who we found out historically had paid an assessment to do a sewer planning area assessment. And it was determined that I think they paid $2 an acre is my recollection for it. And they claimed that they had some sort of substantive right to sewers by virtue of paying that assessment, and that their property should not be withdrawn or taken out of the sewer improvement area. This is different in that we're not looking at reducing the area. We're looking at, you're being asked by the Pikes to enlarge the area, to take in their area.
Bruce, can I ask a question about that? And maybe this just cuts to the chase. If we were to grant and expand the area to include this, does that have some precedential effect, or does that mean that we would have to allow anybody that asked to be in the area that's in close proximity or between areas to be included?
Well, we have litigated the substantive due process issue, which this county prevailed on. We have not litigated the equal protection claim. We had an equal protection claim in the federal court, dismissed that claim, and when it came back to the state court level here in Warren County, the case got settled, so there never was any judicial decision on whether or not there was a violation of equal protection rights, and that's the concern. The statute says that you can modify a sewer improvement area based on you making a decision that it is a necessity based on public health and welfare purposes. So you have to have some public health and welfare purpose for doing so. When we've talked about this previously here, we weren't sure as to whether this area that the Pikes property is in was in the urban service boundaries. And so I've defined that term for you. The sewer improvement area is the Board of County Commissioners create a district. And only if you have a district can you use your discretion and expand sewer improvements in that area. And so what Chris Broush has told you is it's not in the service area or sewer improvement area, as I call it. So therefore, you would have to modify. To modify, it would require a public hearing, a legislative hearing. There is no guidance in Ohio law that tells you how you go about doing that. It's been my recommendation that there be some public notice, even though it's not statutorily mandated, for you to consider to modify the boundaries if there is a reason, a rational basis that you have for public health and welfare purposes. Now, after Chris and I met with the Pikes, I followed up with Alex. And I asked Alex to provide me with a map, and that's what this document being shown on the screen is, of what their urban service boundary, and I think you can see the dark line that he's drawn around that. So for the first time, I now know what the urban service boundary, that doesn't dictate necessarily what the county commissioners do for setting their sewer improvement area, but it has been a factor that the Board of County Commissioners in the past have relied upon to determine whether the sewer improvement area should be consistent with the urban service boundary. And if you're looking at that map in the upper right corner, Alex and I had a conversation this morning. I reached out to him, and he and I went through this entire map, the entire area within the urban service boundary, the color coding, and Alex can comment on all of that because we talked through each of those colors and each of those developments to ascertain what they are. And what I'm going to call, I don't know if that's a fuchsia or a purple up at the top, yeah, that area in there, Alex is, and he can comment on it, that property is zoned for some sort of industrial.
M2, heavy
M2
industrial,
industrial
correct.
development. And it's predominantly sand and gravel and maybe a little bit of Valley Vineyards property. And he just, and I had a discussion, and utilizing the county GIS system, we kind of came up with an estimate that that's about 300 acres. Now, Alex didn't know, I asked the question, how long do the sand and gravel permits last? They're EPA permits, because they have a life on them. They will expire, and at some point, that area will no longer be mined at some date in the future. And it's possible that that property could be developed if it's in our sewer improvement area for housing at high density versus housing at a rural density. So there's 300 acres there that's questionable. And then we also talked about the red area along 22 and 3, which is zoned commercial. There's a couple of commercial uses there. The rest is undeveloped. And then what I'll call over on the west boundary, I'll call it Gold. Gold is a development that has preliminary plan approval. So as you know, having a seat on the Regional Planning Commission, when the Planning Commission gets a preliminary plan presented to it for a large tract or tracts of land, it has to determine what the, in essence, what the density is going to be for the lots and layout and so forth, that they ultimately get platted. And the ones you see that look like streets and cul-de-sacs, those have final plat approval. Those have actually been out. The area below that to the south in Gold has not been developed yet, but it does have a preliminary plan approval, and that would be for density at a rate that would require sewer.
And Alex, where's the subject property?
So the subject property is right here,
In the, we'll call that brown.
yes.
In
The northern side of State Route 22 and 3.
Okay.
So Alex confirmed that it is in the urban service boundary. So to the right or to the east of the gold color, back where we were, in yellow, you have some land there that includes the high school, the middle school, and there's also some large lot zoning that's in large lots in that area that Alex does not believe has sewer capacity. They have on-site septic systems. And then to the east of that, you have what I'll get back to the brown, and all of that has preliminary plan approval as well. So on the single issue of whether or not it's in the sewer improvement area, it's not in the sewer improvement area. It is in Hamilton Township's urban service area. So they anticipate higher density urban development in that line that Alex has drawn around the perimeter of it. So from that perspective, if the board wanted to consider through a legislative hearing process and my recommendation of notification, keeping in mind that there's the purple area with about 300 acres that could potentially be developed in the future if you modified the boundaries to include the urban service area, modified the boundaries of the sewer improvement area, there could be some consequences because there could be some high-density development there. But much like you did down on Zor Road, you changed, or the predecessor board changed the boundary of the sewer improvement area. They modified it to be consistent with Hamilton Township's urban service boundary. And as you know, you may recall, at least Commissioner Grossman was on the board at the time, we had property owners come before the board who were outside, east of Zor Road, if you will, that asked to modify the sewer improvement area, and the board said no. But in that process, the board reached out to Hamilton Township and said, are you interested in expanding your urban service boundary? Are you going to pave roads, plow snow, provide police and fire services, the type of services that an urban service boundary receives, compared to a lesser area or service area of services the township would provide to its rural areas? And the township said no. And the Board of County Commissioners factored that into its decision, along with the concept of what can of worms would we be opening if we expanded it. And one of the the justification for the rational basis for the Board of County Commissioners was the township doesn't want it to be in its urban service boundary. They don't want to provide urban services out there. And if we give something beyond that boundary high density by virtue of the commissioners approving sewers in the area, that's what the unintended consequence would be. So is there an unintended consequence here? Other than the 300 acres, if the board wanted to consider modifying the boundary to include this urban service boundary, because the township has offered a letter of support, it reduces your risk because you have a legitimate, rational basis here to say that the township has already provided zoning and a comprehensive plan for high density, and in a high density area, you certainly would want to, if optimally, have sewer, because these are small lots that are in close proximity. Sewer would be most optimal. So that's a possibility, but you have two issues here. That's just one. The second issue, Mr. Brausch can speak to again, but he's already spoken to you about. You have a physical issue relating to the not necessarily capacity, but the system is failing. And there's going to be a major study that's already underway. There's potentially going to be a major amount of capital improvements that are going to have to be made in maybe the millions of dollars to improve the system. And Josh spoke to one of the properties across the street that was originally planned for some high-density multifamily stuff. That's now that plan has changed, and there's really his comments relate to capacity. Yeah, there's capacity. I think there's capacity that Mr. Browse can speak to you on, but it's more about the collection system and the delivery of that to our treatment plant on the Little Miami treatment plant. That's a big issue. So you can't just look at, oh, maybe we can justify modifying the sewer improvement area to be consistent with the township's urban service boundary. You've also got to consider what all the ramifications are that already exist without this property even coming in, and then for you to enlarge the area, change the boundary to take in more property may just add to or exacerbate that problem.
So Alex, you're officially saying that the township would like to see this particular part, because we're not talking about the township in whole, we're talking about this 12-acre parcel. You are saying you would like to see it in.
That's correct. All things being equal, as long as it doesn't, increase the urban service boundary, because the township's position, as we reiterated in the comprehensive plan of 2020, is to maintain this urban service boundary, because we can't have any more dense residential growth. It's just too much on the services and the schools, and I think you're well aware of that. The concern is if we do this, what are those ramifications? I was under the impression, so hopefully the boundary would maintain itself and not be expanded. I think the concern would be then, as Mr. McGarry pointed out, what happens in this purple area? This is currently zoned M2, so under my understanding, that would have to be rezoned for any type of residential development to happen, and the township would not support that. So in my view, it would not be approved. So, I don't know. Mr. Centers is here as well, and if he wants to add anything, but that would be my sense, is that if this can get sewer, the township trustees are supportive. It's a public health
Sure.
benefit, and that
That's
kind
where
of thing.
I would like to go with this, as opposed to rewriting all the lines. We're talking about, and that's why I keep going back to, we're talking about a 12-acre parcel
right.
today. We're not talking about everything else.
We're
So-
not, but my advice to you is you would not do that. If you want to take in one parcel at a time, that's very risky.
But-
If you want to make the entire and a lot of this is already sewered anyway. The gold, the brown, maybe, the high school sewered as far as I know.
That's right.
So part of the yellow, all of that already has sewer anyway. So it has to be in our, and Chris can speak to it, I assume it all has to be in our area. So if you just select one parcel and do that, you're really
But
opening up.
Bruce, where I was going with that was, number one, have we examined, has this parcel ever paid any sewer assessments 30 years ago?
It has
anything like
not.
that?
No,
I
I
could
don't think so.
speak to that. So it was two owners previously. They were approached, I think in the early 2000s, to be added to the assessment area. They declined.
Okay.
It was a single-family residential at that time. They didn't have any desire to sell. Now then, another owner purchased it, and they had been living there for over 10 years, and they just recently sold to the Pikes.
Fair enough.
So-
Bruce, where I was going with this is, clearly the Board of County Commissioners has discretion, correct? Relative to the sewer improvement area. That is our district, as defined.
Yeah, let me be real clear on that. As far as creating the district, the boundaries of the district, your standard is there has to be some rational basis based on public health
Health
and
or
welfare.
So that was exactly what I was saying. In this particular circumstance, without talking about the surrounding acreage, can we not make a determination that it is in the public's safety and welfare to have a nonprofit drug addiction treatment center? That we are determining that particular usage is in the public's interest. Therefore, we are modifying the map on this parcel because we're determining this parcel complies with that safety and welfare test.
I don't think so, because when it's talking about welfare, it doesn't say general welfare. It's not talking about general welfare from the sense of what you're relating.
But it is health.
If it relates to health, but my recommendation to you, which is what Commissioner Grossman always asks for, my recommendation to you is that whatever area that's in the boundary that Alex has drawn, the township's urban service boundary, some of that's already in our sewer improvement area, and Chris can speak to what is and what's not. Just to, if you were gonna legislatively modify the boundary of the sewer improvement area for public health and welfare purposes, because the township says we want this high density, then you make it, the line of demarcation is the boundary that the township. So they already have a map, and we could map that, and we can identify each of the parcels as long as it doesn't dissect parcels. If it actually, follows property lines, we can identify, that's how we've always done it, is specific parcels. So I think we can get the folks, the Pikes there on that issue.
But we're not looking at the entire urban improvement area. Is there any place that happens to fall inside of that map that you don't want sewers to right this second?
Well, I
Because we're
think-
just looking at a piece of it right now, right?
That's right. We're just looking here. Now, are you talking about the whole urban
That-
service?
my-
This is just the northeast portion, right?
That's my entire point.
Yeah.
That if we talk about, we're gonna have this conform to their map. If I'm on the southern part of the district, then all of a sudden, you did it up here, why are you not doing it for me? Well, no, that's 400 acres, and that can put quarter-acre lots as far as the eye can see. That's my issue with trying to say, oh, it just conforms to your map. Then, if I'm a developer anywhere else in the township or landowner, I want mine in, because I want it to conform to that map.
Well, all I can tell you is that's what we did down at Zoar Road. We took their sewer improvement, their urban service boundary, and we said, we're gonna make this our sewer improvement area boundary because the township says they will provide urban services in this area which needs sewer. And it wasn't the sole justification, but it factored into what the commissioners relied upon to decide that. And at that time, this area down here existed, and we didn't take that in. So I guess the question is there somewhere other than Zoar Road and this area, Morrow, that's on your comp plan for an urban service boundary?
Yes, there is, of course. The
Okay,
northwest
where is that?
portion of the township is the majority of the subdivisions. That's where we have Regency Park and all, Miami Bluffs and all those large subdivisions. And so those are mostly built out.
It's mostly built out.
It is mostly, but so it goes, southern boundary is like Sibsey Road.
Yeah, but what
kind
he's
of-
asking you is this question. He's asking you about territory within your urban service area that is not currently in the sewer area. And he's saying, is there some area like that, that if we did this today, would give them the argument under an equal protection claim that they ought to be in the sewer boundary area as well? And after all, we did it for these people, why aren't they deserving of it? So the question is there some areas within your urban service territory that you do not want to be sewered?
Commissioner Grossman, I can hear maybe someone walking up, but I believe the answer to that question is in the northwestern portion where we have our larger urban service area, they are all guaranteed to have sewer if they want it.
Well, is
So
that
there's-
true now or not?
That not everybody has sewer there, but there is the expectation they're inside the urban service boundary. So they can
I
obtain it.
thought most of them were in your sewer territory that you just mentioned in that area. That's where you're saying most of the development is
That's
happening,
correct.
it's higher density, and they're already in the sewer
But
territory.
are they in
That's correct.
our sewer improvement area?
That's what he's saying that they are.
Mr. Broush might be able to answer that question. I believe they are, but.
Bruce has brought up the issue of the urban service boundary and the sewer service improvement area, and those not matching up. Those do not match up along Zoar Road. If you recall, back earlier probably in 2000, the township, I think, modified the urban service boundary and shrunk it. And then they modified it again, help me here, clarify me, they modified again in 2006. What the county did is, I think the county adopted the 2000 urban service boundary as our sewer improvement area for the Zoar Road location. And then, but we did not go back and modify it, update it to the 2006. So there's a discrepancy. I believe there's a discrepancy between our service boundary and the urban service boundary along Zor Road.
And how big of a
There's
do
also
not
another
match up.
discrepancy. The legislation in '04 and '05 made exception for anyone that had preliminary plan approval. And that's why I called Alex this morning and we walked through each of these color-coded areas. And I asked the question, do they have preliminary plan approval? And we made that exception because that bolsters the argument of a property owner to say, look, if I went through process and planning gave me a preliminary plan approval that said I'm going to get X number of lots.
You can't take it away.
You can't take that away. They may have a substantive due process claim, a vested right. And so we made that exception as well. So it may be modified for that as well. And there's at least one court order that I suspect we're going to be inviting Hamilton Township back before too long to talk
That's
about
right.
as well, which goes beyond the Zor Road urban service boundary.
Which, then the basic premise of my question is, if we try to, in a specific portion of the urban service area, if we modify the map to conform with that, our sewer improvement area to conform with that, number one, does that open up a claim to other parts of the township that we want to be in it also? But then, if it does, is that a big deal? Because it's already built out. And I think the township needs to answer that perfectly clearly, because you have to know if we did it here, but yet this whole other area, yeah, it's technically in our urban service area, but it's not in the sewer improvement area, and all of a sudden, we just brought in another 700 acres, there's 2,000 houses coming in,
Right.
and you know it's gonna happen.
Absolutely. So the comprehensive plan, which was a 2.5-year plus process, identified and maintained and supported the current urban service boundary. So that's where we want to push development. You know, we identified the State Routes 48 and 22 and 3 as our commercial corridors for commercial growth, and we've identified this area, maintained this area, you know, as an urban service boundary area. To Mr. McGarry's point, there's one other subdivision out there east of Zor Road that is permitted, allowed by court order to have sewer. Outside of that, the township has said we don't want any, you know, future growth outside of those, any sewer growth outside those areas.
So you're saying that the township is comfortable, I'd like to hear from Brent on this, that if the sewer improvement area was modified to conform with your urban service area, you would be okay with that?
No, sir. I'm Brent Centers, 7780 South State Route 48 in Hamilton Township. No, sir, that would be a major concern. And to
That's
Commissioner
what I
Grossman's
was
point,
going
that
to.
would be a concern, and there are areas within the urban service boundary that don't currently have sewer, that we don't want to have sewer, because we don't
And
want.
they don't have sewer, not because they're not developed, or necessarily, but because they're not in the service area for sewage.
That's correct.
Okay, so, and that was my question, and the reason I'm asking the question is because of the recommendation of our council. Because he's saying that if we give a very specific exemption just to this piece of property, and not the areas that are surrounding in those urban service territory, he's recommending against that because he's telling us that that presents an potential equal protection problem. And so he's recommending that we expand it to create it in this area to the sewer areas, to the entire urban service territory in this area. Now, evidently, now I'm gonna ask him, does that mean that that gives other people in the urban service territory an equally strong argument on equal protection basis to get into a territory, which is why I was asking you the question, wondering if that was the case, is there any problem anywhere in your urban service territory where you don't want sewers? Now you've answered that question. You don't want it to happen in certain territories.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
So
I
if
get
the
it.
answer is yes, then we would, the Board of Trustees would
Okay.
not be in favor of
So
this.
let me ask you this question.
Yes, sir.
So I guess ultimately, because you guys control zoning in Hamilton Township, we don't. And in this particular area, you've got different zoning which you control, which would, so some commercial industrial area, so even if they got sewage, it's not gonna make any difference in terms of housing density. But there are areas in your urban service territory that's not the case.
Correct.
Where if they were got sewage, they could be way higher density. And that's the problem you have, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And even though you control the zoning, those areas are zoned residential. Or they're agriculture or something like that where they could easily be made into a residential area if the agricultural usage stops. And then they could be higher density if they're in the sewer service territory, right?
That's
And
exactly
what
right.
you're worried about.
That's our concern.
And annexation, that just because your zoning says it's not, we all know that there's other jurisdictions that will come in and say, we love apartments,
That's correct.
let them rip.
Well,
That's
of
correct.
course, to do that, they have to be contiguous or have contiguity. But that's true, that could happen, and I guess you don't like annexation sometimes.
That's correct. And our neighbors to the north are pretty eager with that, and they're being very strategic with gaining parcels very close to this.
I get that, so I think that I understand what you're saying now, and I think I can ask other questions to our lawyer about it. Because I agree with David that, well, oh, by the way, with the Pikes, I didn't ask this question, you were up here, and by the way, obviously, we really like you, and you don't have to be nervous with us at all. We're really approachable people, we want to find a way to help you. When did you buy this property? And did you buy it specifically, do you have this usage on it? Okay, and did you buy it recently?
August 5th.
Okay, but you knew at that time that it didn't have sewers.
Yes, but my intention was that we would be able to get sewer. I mean, all of our neighbors have sewer.
Okay.
Did you buy it, or I thought you said it was gifted? Was it?
Well, gifted,
Okay.
but it's a hoard.
Okay.
And we purchased the property for
Okay.
this.
Money was gifted, not the land.
Okay.
So we were gifted stock and used that stock.
But my point is.
Purchase the land.
But
Okay.
my question was, but you bought it knowing that it did not have, it wasn't in the sewer service territory.
No, actually, we knew we were in the urban.
So you assumed by being in the urban territory that
Not
you were getting
realizing that that
sewers?
was two separate things.
It is two separate things. That's what we're arguing about today. I mean, we're not arguing, we're asking questions to try to figure it out. My only point is that, to me, there is some relevance to the fact that you recently purchased the property in August of this year, where you could have been well cognizant of the fact that it did not have sewers, and you could have bought someplace that did, but you bought this place that didn't, which is creating the issue that we've got. So I'm not saying that that's dispositive, but it's a factor for me to look at.
Well, I think you should also consider what you heard earlier, too. The reluctance to modify the boundaries doesn't prevent them from fulfilling their mission. It just impedes it a little bit. They can have their St. Zachary's Haven with septic. It's going to cost them, it sounded like what Josh said, $25,000 more than what sewers would cost, but they can still do that. They also point out that it consumes a little bit of their land. They couldn't do the pond and maybe some of the animals that they might want to do, but they could do it on septic. So you didn't, refusing to modify the boundaries, which would have to be done in a separate hearing, I just want to point out again, doesn't mean they can't do their mission, that they could do this, they just had to do it on septic, and they're in limbo now trying to figure out which way to go, and that's why they're here.
So Bruce, can you tell me when this went through RPC, what was the expectation at that time?
Septic. There was an express condition in the conditions of approval that stated that they would have to obtain either approval from the health department or the EPA for on-site septic. That's what the,
So the applicant to RPC said that they intended to use.
Oh,
I don't know what the applicant said, but that was a condition that RPC
Condition.
put on the approval, yes.
Well, I want to go back to the Pikes for just a minute. So when you bought the property, you knew it was in the urban service territory, and you thought because of that it was also available for sewage?
Yeah, we had all intention of, we said it from day one when we went to the meeting.
Okay.
Let,
I mean, a lot of it was our own ignorance, just assuming that, hey, all our neighbors have,
And building across the street, they're gonna put in sewer, everybody surrounds us.
well, not all the neighbors have septic. some of the adjacent single-family residential properties, my understanding, have a septic system, not sewer. And the other thing I want to point out to follow up on Commissioner Jones's question, the RPC did not make any decisions relating to like the platting process it has jurisdiction over. It simply made a recommendation to Hamilton Township because it was going through the PUD process. So RPC Executive Committee was a recommendation to Hamilton Township because it went through the zoning process. That's all that was. And the recommendation was that, that a condition of approval be septic approved by either Health Department or EPA. And Stan's in the room. I'm correct about that, right? I know I am. I put it in a write-up summary for our administrator, so I know, I checked that, so I know I'm right.
Right, so that, again, framing this in terms of the questions, that's why I wanted to be perfectly clear on this. Improving, does the township want everywhere that there's a urban improvement area for the sewer improvement area to coincide? And the answer to that is no.
That's correct, no.
My fear is, as soon as we, and again, my counsel, my wise counsel over there, I follow him 99% of the time, but even despite your recommendation of changing the boundary, I'm hesitant to change that boundary just because we're changing the boundary to conform with this, because then I want to change my boundary. I think it has to be, if we go down this path, my humble opinion, I think it has to be very specific, because this is a unique, and again, God bless you for what you're doing, but you are the textbook example of who we would want to do something for, but it's not even a maybe. We definitely want to try to help, so that's why we're bending over backwards, but yet, look at all these consequences, because again, it's not, hey, we're looking, because again, when you, a lot of folks get into the weeds on things, we really do try to look at the 30,000-foot flyover level. We're trying to think about Hamilton Township into the future, and sometimes even, we think about it sometimes even as much, if not more, than the township trustees do when we've thought about these things over past boards, not talking about the current board, but we've been involved with trying to look holistically at all the effects on this, the effects on the schools. That's why we've played hardball on some of these things in the past. But you are the epitome of somebody we don't want to play hardball with. You're a nonprofit that's helping folks that are going through drug recovery. Of course we want to try to help. So that's why I'm saying, Bruce, that if I have any discretion, which I think Ohio law gives us discretion, on determining our sewer improvement boundaries, and we can modify those boundaries in the case of, as we determine, welfare and health of our community. Why could we not go and modify? Because this is exactly, I think, what Ohio law is specifying, that we have discretion, that if we determine this is in the best interest of our community, health and welfare, and we determine that, if Joe Developer comes in and says, well, wait, you modified it here, I can raise my right hand and say, I did that because this is a nonprofit that's helping our residents that have a serious, serious problem. And I can testify that that is why I did that.
Does this make a good equal protection argument to keep other people from using it?
It makes an argument, but somebody wearing a black dress is the one's going to answer your question. I don't know the answer to that.
You would say, though, again, going back to the other question, is it safer to expand the sewer area to the entire area of the urban service territory here and to preserve our equal protection argument?
Yes, but let me also say that when Alex and I reviewed this today, and maybe I got a question for Brent, on the question that you had presented to you earlier about there are some urban service boundaries that don't currently have sewer and the township trustees don't want them to have sewer. Is any of this area fall in that category?
Yes, sir, the purple area, we wouldn't want
Okay.
sewer up there, and we wouldn't want high density there in the future when the gravel and sand permits run out.
Right, so that's why I brought to your attention the 300 acres in the beginning of my presentation. But the rest of it seems to have preliminary plan approval. So it almost seemed like there's no consequence if you're looking at it with blinders on for just this. But yes, definitely the purple would have a potential consequence. And yes, the answer to your question is yes, that to single a property out can we make that argument? We can make that argument. Is it going to carry the day? I just can't answer that. If you have an area like this, where we can say the township decided it's going to have urban services, and urban services there's a public health and welfare reason to provide them with sewer, I think that's a better argument. But now we're hearing the township really doesn't want all that area in. So that's for you to consider as well.
Right, so we have three options. Do nothing and say, you got to go down the septic path. Do a little bit, which is kind of where I was thinking, is that defensible, and just focus on this 12-acre parcel and use that argument, which is 100% legitimate. It's in the public's health and welfare to modify our boundary for this, because we have had thousands of Warren County residents die from drug addiction, and we need a additional treatment facility. So this would be, in my opinion, a textbook example of public health and welfare. If you're saying, no, because on this 12-acre parcel, there could be a rogue decision that says, wait, forget all the boundaries and open it up. That is a risk we would take if we went down that. But again, I'm not putting you on the spot right this second, because you need to think through this completely and look at the ramifications of that, because I'm sure that probably wasn't on your radar coming into this meeting. And then option number 3 is modify this existing boundary area to conform with the urban improvement area of the township, which we also, oh, well, that makes sense. I've been scared of that all along, because I know there's other areas, and that's why I wanted to be perfectly clear. There's other areas, the township has zero interest, and then we just found out even in this area, they have zero interest in improving that to everyone. So those are, as I see it, are 3 options.
Let me also, don't let it be lost on you, this other issue about the system, failing system. And I would ask you to hear from Mr. Broush on that and what impact that has, because if we have developments that want to come in and develop their property, and we say, no, you can't do that because we have this failing system and all these improvements have to be made, and they'll say, but you let this little corner come in with that failing system. And I can understand the capacity is very limited if it's a maximum of 12 people, but Mr. Broush may want to speak to that issue as well, because we haven't really talked about it much today.
Good point. We'll call on him in a second. So, Mr. Centers, you are the township administrator. Are those the 3 options as you understand them?
That's 3 options as I understand them. May I make one final point, or just a clarification? So in front of you, you have the letter of support from the township trustees. This was under the premise of this would work for just this parcel, because they've been a joy to work with. We care about those with chemical addictions. We have a passion for that. The risks that have been presented, our Board of Trustees would not believe, in my opinion, that the risk that comes with this parcel would be worth this one parcel getting the expansion, unfortunately, as much as we love the project.
Okay, so I don't know what you just said.
With this information today, expanding it to this one parcel, but having the risk of getting all of the 300 acres in the future to get that expansion as well.
You're changing your recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Another factor for me is the timing of purchasing the property, and that it was not in sewers when you bought it. But have you actually closed on the property? Okay.
And I guess, it seems to me that the better legal position is to align our boundaries. That gives us some protection there. But if, I hear that the township saying that they'd be okay with this one parcel, but not aligning it. But in the commissioners choosing to do that, that risk isn't less than us modifying the boundary, because we can go in and make our best argument, but we don't get to define what health and welfare means. And so, to me, it's a distinction without a difference, when indeed the purple property, as I understand it, is under mining leases here for a period of time for which you control the zoning, anyway, and it puts it in a better, look, if we accept this in, I think you have to assume that this will be litigated at some point, and we may lose, and you're gonna get this anyway. I just don't,
I think what he's saying is he's switching his position because he sees that there's a higher risk. If we finger this thing out and we give it approval, what we're being told by our council is that that is a factor that can be used to grant it to the rest of the urban service territory where there's now a higher risk, that will mean that a court will say that we must grant this same sewer boundary in the purple territory because we did it to the neighbor, and you're now not wanting to take that risk. So I appreciate your reversal on that. And I understand that our counsel is saying he can't predict what a court would do, doesn't know, but there's a risk that this increases the chance that the surrounding territory, in particular the purple territory, when it's no longer mined and when it's ideal to put in higher density housing, that they're gonna get sewers into that area because of what we do today, or what we might do in the near future once we have a public hearing on this. So I think, do we have a decision to make today?
No, you do not. And we can continue to investigate this after today and look into some issues such as finding out how long the permits are. And also Brent's making a judgment call here, I think.
Correct.
He might want to go back and talk to the trustees and have them confirm they're changing their position if that risk. And I'm, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, maybe he's speaking that, but I would think if I was in his shoes, I'd want to go back and verify with the trustees.
I'm
And then
confident
secondly,
they're not willing to take a risk on 300 acres worth of dense residential.
And it's not just 300 acres. You understand my point? If we modify
It'd be on
one
all the other
part,
service boundaries.
it's the entire service area, because what is the justification for doing it on this 312 acres or whatever it is up here, and I'm in the southern part? Well, wait, I'm in your urban service area. Why am I not getting in? And that's where, again, my guts serve fairly well when I have to raise the right hand and say, why did I do something? I don't know why they're not in, as opposed to this. Well, we said it was okay up here. Why is it not okay down there? I don't have a good defense for that. I do have a good defense under health and welfare of why I modified for a 12-acre parcel to address a community need. And was that a major modification to where everybody gets in then? So again, I'm not putting you on the spot of, we have to answer that right now, but in my humble opinion, that's the only path I would be willing to go down, because I don't want to change this to let in 300-something acres, which I know as a fact, because again, I was there when Joe Trout and those folks come marching in. Why'd you do this for him and not for me? And I don't have a good answer.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I think
let-
we don't have to make a decision today, right?
no,
And I'd like you to find out
there's
more
no
information.
decision to make. This is really just a work session. Let me respond to one thing you asked earlier. You said you may want some time to think about it. I already thought of that. I mean, when prior to meeting with Don and Josh and Adam, their attorney, who's also here, I had thought of that. And when I think about, on balance, weighing these things, I'm kind of in the same boat that the township and Brent is in, that I'm just saying that that's a pretty high risk to go that route. Not to say it wouldn't carry the day, but I just can't give you any advice because I don't know.
Okay, let's hear from Chris briefly on what are the outside ancillary effects to the system. Thank you, Hamilton Township.
Let me provide a little bit of clarification on some of the parcels out here before I move on to our capacity issues. The parcel up through here that you talked about, the 300 acres that's in purple, a large portion of this is actually already mined, and when you look at the aerial photographs, there's gravel pits, open areas, there are ponds back through here. But there's some of this property that is, it's actually The Valley Vineyard property that's further to the west here, that can be developed. There's some parcels along the front, along 22 and 3, that have come in the past, asking for sewer service for retail. Our major concern in this area isn't just this boundary here that you see in the purple, but it's also down here, the retail area. I think the red area is probably shown as retail, which is probably the Bellwood Golf Course. And then also there's areas directly adjacent to the villages of Classic Way here. It's the vacant parcels here, the farm parcels here. We've had developers come in and inquire about expanding the sewer service area to the west here along the big, large farm field here. So there is some interest in growth in this area. So, right now, our issue in this area is that we just don't have capacity to push flow from this area 7 miles down the road to our treatment plant. Our treatment plant is at Lower Little Miami Wastewater Treatment Plant. It's 7 miles downstream from the Little Miami River. So all that flow has to be conveyed, and the way it's conveyed is through pump stations. We have 2 pump stations, major pump stations at this general location. One is the Bigfoot lift station, so all the flow from this subdivision gets conveyed to the Bigfoot lift station, and from at that location on 22 and 3, it's pumped down to the bike trail and then pumped 7 miles downstream to Lower Little Miami. That lift station there is undersized, and the lift station in Morrow is undersized. During dry weather events, normal day events, it's not a problem. But when it rains, we have a lot of inflow and infiltration that makes its way into the sewer. And then these 2 pump stations battle each other to get into that force main. And these pump stations will run 24 hours a day. And the sewers in the village become full. And the sewers then start back. We don't have backups in houses, and we're not aware of any overflows into Todd's Fork or Little Miami River. But during these wet weather events, we are at maximum capacity. So I'm not saying it's a problem during daily events, during dry, normal weather events, but when it rains, we have inundations. And that's why we have a study that's being done by a national engineering firm, Black & Veatch. And we've done some flow monitoring out in this location to really determine what needs to happen in the future. What improvements do we need to make?
Is the capacity problem related to the size of the pumps? Is that it?
The size of the pumps and the size of the force main. The force main right now, when it was installed, is a 10-inch force main, and that's undersized. So
The solution to that would be to increase its size and to increase the pump capacity?
yes, it'll increase the pump capacity, increase the size of the force main, and potentially putting in a detention tank in the village of Morrow.
How expensive is that improvement?
It will be a major undertaking project. I do not have costs yet from Black & Veatch, our engineering firm, but I'm anticipating it'll be several $1 million to make these improvements. We do have money set aside in our sewer fund. We have major capital projects that we're planning for, so we know this is coming down the road. This is a project that will probably have to occur in like 5 years. So we are trying to set aside monies to finance this.
So regardless of what occurs here today or whatever we're doing or other expansion, you are planning to do that at some point in the near future?
Yes, it is on our radar. It's in our capital plan. So right now, we're trying to figure out the magnitude and fit it into with the rest of our projects.
All right,
Thank you.
very good, thank you. Well, Pikes, again, we're not taking back anything we said. We're trying, we will try. And hopefully, again, you appreciate our position of no matter how much we're trying to, I'm willing to help you. I'm willing to even push the boundaries of trying to help you. I think we all are. But are we willing to see the township have an additional 5,000 homes because of what we did for you? No, we're not. I'm not. So if there's a way around that, if there's a worker way around that, we're going to try. But no promises, that's all we can say. Adam, you got any comments? Is there counsel?
I'll speak with your council and the Hamilton Township. Thank you so much, commissioners, for taking the time to work with Pikes. Your care and concern is evident, and I appreciate you taking your oath to represent the county well.
We will try. Thank you all. Thank you. Very good. Our next item, sorry. Only an hour late on this one, talking about sewers. We knew that was going to take a while. We have an administrative hearing, site plan review application of Shaker Run PUD, Pod F, the Masters at Shaker Run in Turtle Creek Township.
Good morning. I have Ashley Wallace with Bear Becker with me this morning, also Regional Planning Commission. Hopefully this is a much easier decision. This is a site plan review for the Masters at Shaker Run. Again, Ashley is here with me. Jason is out of town. The township is Turtle Creek, and the property location is Shadowwood Drive. The parcel ID is 1236-200-026-0. Property size is 27.25 acres. This is part of a larger parcel, but what we are looking at today is the 27.25 acres, which has 845 feet of road frontage. It is an R1 PUD, and those PUD standards state that any multifamily would come before you for site plan review. Again, this is Turtle Creek. It is single-family residential. The existing land use is vacant. The site plan requested is for 29 multifamily units, and of course, this is with compliance with their PUD and also Warren County Rural Zoning Code. Again, site plan process is before you for final decision.
So this has already been, they have the zoning, they have everything, there's literally nothing we can kind of do at this point other than modify what they look, little-
Exactly. What's already been approved is Pod K, and we'll get into more information on that, but there's already been a similar area of this neighborhood that's been approved, and I'll show pictures of that. This is just that last multifamily section, sir.
So what are we being asked to do today on this?
It's just your approval for the site plan.
Okay, and then does it come back through another approval process subsequent to this, or is this final?
No, this is final, sir.
Okay.
For this pod.
Yes, for this section.
And this is similar to other pods that have already been gone through this process, been approved?
Yes, sir.
And this is a contiguous or adjacent pod?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so it's all the zoning's already there, everything's already approved, what's been going on is already accepted, and we're just finalizing this next pod with the same plan that they've had all along.
Yes, sir.
And you recommend we approve this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's easy.
Much easier than the last one. Again, this is an aerial showing the area in Turtle Creek Township. Again, this is Pod F. It is that last corner piece there. The proposal, again, is 29 buildings. This is the multifamily. Also in this section, there will be 273 single-family units, but of course, those are already approved. I do have an asterisk beside the 4 units. Because of density, they are able to do a 5-unit, so they may not do any 4 units in this area. This is the site. Shadowwood comes down, and it does stub at the prison property. We're looking at the 5 units on what would be the right side if you're facing the screen. Those 5 units would be done first, and then after that, the other units would be done. This is an elevation showing what the 14 family would look like, or looks like already in the other part. This is villa elevations 4 unit. This is villa elevations 8 unit. I think this helps because this is what is existing, and this is what this would look like as well. This is front of those units and then backside. This is showing some of the materials and how the layout is, also the landscaping that they provide. Building materials, again, this is very similar to what is already existing. Dumpster details, again, this is the existing dumpster that is in Pod K. As you can see, they landscape and keep this kind of out of sight, so it's not as noticeable. There are 2 dumpster locations in this new part. One, again, is in the first section that they're going to build, and then the other is centrally located in that second phase.
That's during the building process?
I'm sorry, sir?
That's during the building process?
Dumpsters of what they will be used for some of their garbage, so those will be remaining.
Okay, so that's permanent,
Yes, sir.
okay.
They're required 2 parking spaces per unit, and since they have driveways and also garages, they're exceeding that.
Exceeding what? What are they exceeding?
The parking requirements.
Okay.
Could I get you to scoot closer to the
I'm
microphone?
Thank you.
Landscaping, as you can see, their current landscaping throughout the neighborhood, and then also what they propose for the new pool area, and I'll give you a close-up of that. Also, this does give you a front and rear view of the pool cabana. Signage, as you can see, the ironwood sign is already installed and nicely landscaped. That's what we're expecting. We did have masters on a lot of it. Now I think they are changing this section to the majors. So just a name change. It doesn't affect zoning or anything of that nature. Lighting, of course, is what you see is standard throughout the neighborhood. It'll continue through this part. There is, as we mentioned, the stub street to the south that was required in PUD Stage 1. They are conforming to that requirement. There is an emergency access that has been asked for, and it is granted. There will be signage here that does state that it is just for emergency access vehicles only. Also with that, the developer and Bear Becker has worked with the Turtle Creek Township Fire Department just to make sure that they have an easier way of maneuvering through these. They've installed some grass pavers. As you can see, they're 21.5 by 23. That just allows them an easier way to turn around when they get into these areas. So the staff summary, the location is Pod F. As we stated, it's 27.25 acres. Parking they exceed, landscaping complies, signage also meets the code requirements. Lighting is the same as throughout the rest of the neighborhood. And then service structures, we discussed where those two are, and they will, of course, be landscaped. Of course, site plan, we did cover everything for the most part, the signage, the landscape, the lighting. Reviewing departments, we did send out site plans to those departments on August 24th, 2021. Those include, of course, Engineer's Office, Water and Sewer, Soil and Water, RPC, Turtle Creek Township Trustees and Fire Department, Warren County Combined Health District, Building Department, Sheriff's Office, and Lebanon Schools. Turtle Creek, other than when they were working with them on those turnarounds, had no other additional comments. The Warren County Water and Sewer. Number one, design and construction of the water improvement shall be in accordance with the Warren County Water and Sewer design standards. Also, number two, for redundancy and reliability purposes, the water line along Augusta Drive shall extend westwardly along the emergency access drive to the future single-family residence at Pod F, and coordinate design with the gas companies to obtain the appropriate permits. RPC, number one, compliance with the standards of the Warren County Rural Zoning Code and also the PUD Stage 1 and 2 standards. The proposed sidewalks that are parallel with Shadowwood Drive to the edge of the property boundary to the south shall be bonded. What it originally thought is that they would put those sidewalks in, but with all the construction, those would be destroyed. So we worked with the engineer's office and thought it was best to just have those bonded for when it's done. Three, install an emergency access drive, pool clubhouse, and stub street connection prior to the approval of 75% of the zoning permits in the multifamily units in Pod F. Number four, emergency access shall include a restricted entrance with identification signage and be constructed to the standards of a private street. And then finally, five, consider additional dumpster enclosures if the individual units do not have curbside garbage collection. Are there any questions on this part for me?
No. Is the applicant here?
Ashley with Bear Becker is here.
Do you have any, do you have a presentation you want to just rely on?
No, I was just going to concur with staff comments. I'm here for any questions. And just regarding the dumpster comment, majority of those units will have individual trash pickup service through the trash service, and the dumpsters are just provided for, there's a few units that do not have their own garage. So those dumpsters are more for those units, as well as anybody that would want, in the neighborhood, that would want probably to toss larger boxes or something like that.
So you concur with staff's comments? You don't have any questions for or anything like that? Okay, thank you. Is a public meeting. Anyone wish to speak on this topic? Either for it or against it? Anyone?
I would like to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Carol Updike. We live right on Green Tree Road.
Come on up, ma'am, because they record them and all that.
Hi, I'm Carol Updike. We live on Green Tree Road, and you turn into Shaker Run Golf Course right there. The traffic there is horrible. There are a lot of accidents, so I'm just wondering if there's going to be another exit other than the one on the Green Tree Road.
Good question.
There eventually will be another access point. The state property is being developed, and so residents of Shaker Run will be able to go out and actually exit onto 63.
Is that the development that we had previously?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. But what it is in front of our house, they took part of our front land, and it goes down, and when it comes up, we hear squealing tires all the time. It's a very dangerous situation, and like I said, there have been a lot of accidents. And, when we pull out, we have to exit into Shaker Run. We stop, and if we just stop and go ahead and move, then all of a sudden, we'll see a car pop up out of that little blind area. It's really unsafe, and I was wondering if at any point they would exit onto Union Road? Is that
Not that I'm aware of, not for Union.
Yeah, ma'am, the engineer's office is trying a new system. It's kind of like a radar thing for people that have hills and some blind spots.
Okay.
And they're gonna see how that goes. There's, with the new technology, basically a sensor that shows into the areas and has like a red light or what have you, hey, there's a car coming. So we can definitely, tell the engineer's office or alert them
I
to
appreciate
your
that,
issue.
yeah.
And if this system works, maybe try to see if that would actually be appropriate there at your area. But as you can see, that based on, you were here for our last discussion, this is what we talk about with the unintended consequences and things like that, that this was all approved, what was it, Bruce, 30 years ago or something?
Long time ago.
Long time ago that
We were
people
living
didn't think.
there.
Right.
We were there,
Yeah, the whole,
the whole thing.
multifamily all over the place in this area. I mean, yeah,
Okay,
I'm not a fan, but there's literally nothing we can do about it.
okay, well, thank you.
But yeah, we'll definitely alert if you can do that, alert the engineer's office to have them take a look at that new system.
Okay, appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wish to speak on this matter? Very good. Motion to close this administrative hearing?
So moved.
Second.
And yes, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move to approve this is a site plan review application for Shaker Run PUD Pod F in Turtle Creek Township.
Second.
With conditions?
Are there conditions?
Yes.
RPC recommendations.
Yes.
Yep, with the conditions set forth by the RPC recommendations.
And yes. Very good, thank you. Next, we have an administrative hearing relative to the George Steele PUD Stage 2 in Turtle Creek Township.
Good morning, Commissioners. Go ahead and
If you'd
get-
state your name for the record.
Absolutely. Elizabeth Dakin. I am with the Warren County RPC. I didn't know. All right. So this is in Turtle Creek Township. The applicant is George Farmlands LLC. The property owner is George Farmlands LLC, George Steele Properties. Parcel ID is as shown. The site address is 1207 US Route 42 in South, in Lebanon, Ohio 45036. The current zoning is I-1 with PUD overlay, and the site area is 49.006 acres. So it was heard by the Regional Planning Commission, and now it's to you for a decision. And this is the vicinity map showing the site, all that's in red, including the existing George Steele facility along 42 and also McClure Road. This is a closer site aerial. You can see the creek there as well. The proposal is to add a new road to accommodate their large trucks and improve ingress and egress. Also additional outdoor storage, setback 300 feet or with buffer type D, if within 100 feet of the property line. Street trees also along McClure Road and buffer type A lining the property line to the east. Here's a site plan showing existing parking with existing building. The legend shows the landscaping, but I'll go ahead and show another slide that shows additional information. This is landscaping shown, the street trees as well as buffer type A along the east, and then shaded or that dotted area over by McClure Road to be D if the dotted area below that were to become within 100 feet. And this is the new road connection shown to McClure Road with right turns only for the trucks. This is landscaping showing just what buffer type D entails. And they propose a mound along McClure Road if it is to or if the storage is to come within 100 feet of McClure Road, and then also buffer type D on that mound. And then street trees would be back beyond that, but buffer type A schematics there. This is showing the zoning and floodway. Floodway towards the bottom there, and then it is I-1 throughout now. The RPC recommendation is to approve the George Steele PUD Stage 2, subject to the following conditions. 1, the development shall comply with the Warren County Rural Zoning Code and the I-1 zoning district standards, except where exempt by the Planned Unit Development Overlay standards. The applicant receives an access permit from the Warren County Engineer's Office for the access point to McClure Road. 3, the existing wastewater treatment system must be protected during the construction of the driveway and must meet the appropriate setback requirements set in the Ohio Administrative Code. 4, an earth disturbing permit through the Warren County Soil and Water Conservation District is required before construction can commence. Special care should be taken when designing sediment and erosion controls along Turtle Creek. And 5, any construction within floodplain limits will require a floodplain permit from the Warren County Building and Zoning Department. And then I have the backup slides, PUD standards if needed. Are there any questions?
No, very good. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Do you have any questions or agree? If you could just state your name.
Yes, Brad Frost with George Steele Fabrication Vice President.
Very good, and you agree with the conditions?
Yes.
Thank you. We've given you all the, to say yes one more time, we've given you every opportunity to ask her questions and review the documents.
Yes, we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak on this matter, either for it or against it? Hearing none, is there a motion to close this administrative hearing?
So moved.
Second?
And yes, pleasure of the board.
Make a move that we approve the George Steele PUD Stage 2 in Turtle Creek Township, subject to the RPC's recommendations and conditions.
Second?
And yes. Bruce, were you okay with the Dave Young modification to the script there?
Under the circumstances, yes.
Thank you. Very good. Have your approval, thank you. I see that's our last agenda item for the day. Anyone else, public meeting, wish to address the board? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yes?
And yes.
Thank you.